I'm here with Andrew Roby today from Andrew Roby Events, mainly doing corporate events throughout normal years and also focusing on the wedding season quite a bit. Now, I've been wanting to speak with Andrew, especially because he's based in Washington, a region that we have not covered yet. Globally, every country is having their own approach to it, their own way of managing the situation and their own outlook. So what I'm mainly focused on in this interview is your personal experience so far, how you are looking forward to 2020 and beyond, what you think of the industry, how are they managing it, what you expect from the business, and how that will change as well.
So it's really a sticky place to put yourself in, right? Because we don't know a lot about the developments on an economic basis and the impact for our infrastructure being in the event and wedding industry and what that looks like, how or when we're going to be allowed to start this back. So from a personal side, it's like anxiety, really just trying to figure out how I'm going to make sure I pay my bills, pay my team, and still keep a level head during this time. But also be very optimistic. I want to be very encouraging and know that we're going to get past this. I mean, we've faced so many different things that have been of equal of a level as this. And so I know that we're going to be able to get past it. And so just trying to get past that and try to figure out what our government is doing for us is really, leaves us trying to figure that out and understand the dynamics of that. In 2020, how long is it going to last? Is it going to go into 2021? And then also how to manage our business, how to keep it afloat is really a lot of things that we are still trying to navigate through. And just still trying to be positive, trying to still keep that hope alive for right now. So, yeah.
Okay, which is very important. I'm happy to hear that, even though it's still kind of orienting phase. And I guess that is for everyone. That kind of goes for everyone right now at this stage. It's good to have somebody with a positive outlook. From what you've been doing, because I can understand that with the services that you offer, a lot of things will be on hold, but you will always also be looking at how you could pivot your services to maybe fit a new reality a little bit more. Are there any best practices that you've been experiencing within your industry that you would like to share with your industry colleagues?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we have learned is customer service, and being the type of company that is going to communicate with your audience. A lot of times when we find ourselves in situations like this where it's very challenging, we want to just like crawl into our hole. We want to go with what is familiar and what is safe for us. And I think doing that will probably be detrimental to your business because, one, you have existing clients. They want to know what's going on. They want to know how are we going to help them get through this challenging time. But also for future or potential clients, they need to be able to see that you are assertive, that you have the leadership that it takes right now in order to get them through trying to do an event or trying to do a wedding. And that's really the biggest thing that we've learned is just to stick and improve to our customer service elements, because in customer service, replying back to emails on time, doing phone calls, just following up are really creative or key things that we have to do. It's the foundational pieces to business that we have really seen to be phenomenal, because our clients are like, oh my God, it's great to hear from you. It's good that, you're still paying attention to us and that, you haven't gone MIA and that we still have you on our team. So those are probably the key things I would say.
That's really good. I think, yeah, there's probably a lot of people who are just too afraid to reach out because they don't have anything concrete to say or to share yet, which obviously is comes from a good place where you don't want to let your clientele down. But I think also acknowledging that we don't know what is going to happen, at least to the people that we're currently already working with, to make sure that they have a good understanding of where you stand as an event planner is the most important thing at this moment, for sure. How do you think your job as an event planner will change moving forward?
Wow, I feel like, as an event planner right now, we've already worn so many hats. We've been an accountant, we've been a lawyer, we've been a mathematician, and all these other things that have just, happened to us. And so now even more than ever, I feel like now we're being a doctor, we're being a psychiatrist, and all these other things that have been added onto this, because we now have to figure out how to protect our clients and their guests, you know, from a medical standpoint, and then how to figure out how to revamp events and weddings, the dynamics of those. So the creativity is really amped up even more, because there's a higher expectation that is coming of us as you know, creators and vendors here in the event industry. So I think that there's so many more hats to this, and I think there's a lot that we still don't even know that we have to wear by being event planners, until we get to the point where we're actually trying to plan and produce events in a COVID-19 environment. So I think that we just have to continue to be open-minded and still try to think outside of the box and ask the questions that we don't think that we actually should be asking. So what we don't know, we should be knowing, and just trying to figure that out right now.
Mm-mm. All right. So to sum that up, you would say be prepared to wear even more different hats that you might not have been wearing before, in order to expand your package and expand your knowledge and expand the ways you can service your clients. So how do you see that? Like, what would you say a future-proof proposition for an event manager would consist of? Is it just health and safety adaptations, or consulting, or?
I think so. This is what, as an Army vet, you know, I was in the Army, and one of the biggest things that we have learned, because we don't know what the future holds, we can't predict that. But what we could do is find the fundamental things on how to meet risk, and risk management is really the biggest thing that I would recommend for people, because it allows us to identify what the issue is and come up with ways in order to meet that goal, as far as producing events and taking care of our clients. And so now we should definitely be looking into risk management classes and courses, but really thinking ahead on what plans we operate our business. We know how to operate events, and just trying to navigate the new normal to that is going to really be imperative for us all.
All right. I think it's really interesting that you have a background as well, a medical background from an Army perspective. That is also probably the reason that you are somebody who keeps an positive approach to very rapidly changing situations, whereas somebody else would maybe potentially completely block when that is happening, when things are not going. Even though, as you mentioned, event planners are known to be very flexible people, and they can definitely take a hit, this is of different magnitude. So a lot of people will crumble under the pressure of just not knowing what is going to happen. So I think it's interesting to hear how your previous skills are really coming into play there. That is really, really cool. So looking at the expectations from the government outwards, what general advice is being given about postponing or canceling events?
So that's the thing. For us here in the US, it's been very minimal. You know, when this all started, you know, for us, it probably started late February, early March here in the US. And the only guidance that we really received is that, okay, one, it went to 250, you know, guests per event. Then it went down to, okay, now you can only have 50 guests per event. And then it went to, you know, there's no events at all. But there has been little to no guidance on how to, you know, re-engage and restart this, because a lot of the states in the US have actually begun to reopen, but there has been no guidance on how that reopening looks like, you know, and if we are going to reopen, what stages does that look like for events and weddings? And I think that's, you know, a lot of hotels have taken upon themselves to actually implement their own plan, which I think is really great. But at the same time, we look to our governors and we look to our president to say, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is how things should happen. You know, with the US, we have a social secretary that their job is events. You know, it's events at the White House and the Capitol and things like that. So it would have been great to see the social secretary take on the mantle to say, hey, look, this is the guidance that events and weddings should be taking. but we haven't really received that. So it's left up to the planners, the vendors, the venue.
How do you think venues or suppliers should go about cancellation or moving their event at this point when they are taking lead, to make sure we don't create that snowball effect, so to say?
Right. Yeah, I think that now is a great time to use this as a case study, because when we're looking at hotels and other venues, they have been the ones who really have led the effort on whether or not we can postpone or cancel based off of their contract clauses. And I think for most of us, we have never had like a postponement, and that has been built into contracts. Of course, we have a cancellation clause, but now trying to navigate how to postpone and push things back has really been led by venues and hotels, and being able to use them as a case study that will help us for future events is really going to be important. And I think we can use the snowball effect in a positive way versus saying, hey, this has happened. These are all the bad things that have happened. Now this is just going to be a ripple effect. But we can get in front of this and say, okay, look, let's work with our hotels and let's make sure that we're protecting our clients and embedding within the contracts to say, hey, look, versus me canceling this and you're losing out all of your money, how about we give you a credit so that way you can apply that money towards a future date? Now, I know that some of that may not be possible, but if my client has spent $250,000 on a hotel, it's hard for me to believe that some of that $250,000 can't be used as a credit for something in the future. So I think that using those, this environment right now as a case study to help us and protect our clients is something that we really should pay attention to, when it comes to cancellations and postponements.
That's nice. I think that is interesting to hear, especially that you think there could be a positive effect as well, which would obviously be a way more long-term effect, I think, for the industry. And that goes from this to sustainability to thinking about how necessary are some things that we are doing. Like, can we be more hybrid in our approach, especially for business meetings? There's all very interesting questions coming up due to this COVID situation. That are going to give us some pretty interesting insights, I reckon, for the whole industry. How adaptive is the industry in its response, do you think? Have you been seeing any cool things happening in your network due to this obviously negative cause?
Sadly, I don't think that we have been as adaptive as I would like it to be.
Okay.
The reality of it is that a lot of us are in-person providers, service providers. When I think about the floral industry and all the things that they're going through, without events, there's flowers that are simply just dying. We have our wholesalers and our growers that have tons of inventory that is not being moved. And so I think that there's been a detrimental aspect to COVID-19 on the events industry, because we just don't have the events to push out all of the things, the materials that we normally would. As far as managing, this and being very, proactive versus reactive, I think from the beginning of COVID-19, we've been reactive. That's why a lot of events had to cancel, because there were no contingency plans in place to say, hey, look, if this happens or something crazy happens, here is the alternative. And we weren't able to react quick enough. And so things like Coachella, things like, the Facebook conference and all these other huge international conferences and exhibits just weren't able to execute fast enough. And I think that now it's still taking us a long time to build up that infrastructure to say, hey, look, although this is not an in-face, type of event, the virtual element is just as good. And I don't believe that we're there yet to say virtual conferences and virtual events have the same results as an in-person event at this time. But I think that the lessons are being learned. I think that we're building up to be able to fight equally for face-to-face events that we are for virtual events. But I just don't think that we're at the position right now to say that they're 50-50.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. It's a different format, and it takes some adapting and some getting used to it as well to see where it actually fits within a strategy, especially
Right.
if we're going to look long term. But it's definitely interesting, I think, from from our point of view, being a technology supplier, everything where we can connect the dots in terms of data more is interesting for us. If you're looking just at your business specifically, how have your clients responded to this situation?
So for the most part, it's honestly been 50-50 for us. We've had half of our clients since it started, cancel their events, and just say, this is just too stressful. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to try to reschedule and try to figure this out. This is for both corporate events and for weddings.
Yeah.
But then we had the other half that said, you know what? We're going to fight for this. We're going to fight to have our events, even if it's, a couple of months or a year from now. We're going to fight for our wedding.
We will have our summit.
Yeah, and so they want that. And so it's been encouraging, though, because at the end of the day, both sides, whether they've canceled their event or they postpone it, both sides have been very optimistic and supportive about it. And, there's times where things go wrong and then the person blames you, even though you had nothing to do with it. But I think that all of our clients have been very supportive and understanding about the situation, even though some of the things may not land in their favor. They're still optimistic, and I think that's been the greatest part about this.
Mm-mm. All right. So there's one topic I always struggle with to just dive in directly, but you already mentioned it at the beginning of this talk, and I think it would be weird not to mention it as it's so much on people's mind right now. What is your action plan to maximize 2020?
Yeah, so there's so many things that we have thought about doing, because the biggest thing is that we have to try our best to recuperate the sales that we are missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, we have shifted to a virtual aspect for the majority of the events and concepts that we're doing. And for the corporate side, it's things that we've already been doing, but we've enhanced it, things like webinars, things about, like speakers, motivational speakers talking and team building, trying to figure out the team building aspects in a virtual environment. So we've done that, but we've also, for weddings, right now we're still not able to do any events here in DC, but we've come up with our DC micro wedding, concept, and that's allowing anywhere between 2 all the way up to about 50 people to still have a very small scale wedding once we're allowed to do events again. And of course, that's not a representation of their larger wedding, but a lot of the couples just want to get married. They want to take that weight off their shoulder right now and say, okay, you know what? No matter what, I know that I'm at least married. We'll have the big wedding and the big reception when things improve. But having this opportunity right now is the best thing that we have. So we're trying to come up with those types of ideas just to be able to decrease the fear in events and answer some of the questions that keep our clients up at night. So, still trying to navigate through this and still trying to figure out what we can do. But like I mentioned, earlier, it's really dependent upon our government. I can come up with the best ideas, but if people want in-person experiences, we can't offer that right now. We can we can only do the virtual aspects of it. So it's just trying to figure out how to enforce our plans once we're allowed to actually have events, and then just enhance the virtual events for those who actually are wanting to do virtual events and see the benefits in those.
Interesting. I think it's the harsh reality that for some it will just not translate to a virtual format or a virtual channel, which would be the case with bigger weddings. But it's cool to hear that you're focusing on what is possible within these limitations. And I think micro weddings is a beautiful concept, and I'm sure that it will lead to a whole new stream of business with people who otherwise would have planned their wedding somewhere else or with somebody else or in a different way. I think a micro wedding sounds perfect. To me, that's much more appealing than a really big wedding, but maybe that's because I'm just a bit scared of really big personal events.
Yeah. I love I think that we can probably use the micro wedding concept for corporate events too, because the thing that's most promising about the micro weddings that we're doing is that we are creating it for multiple couples at a time. So
Hmm.
the couples are actually sharing the cost of that wedding for like the big ticket items, you know, the
Right.
ceremony
Okay.
stuff, things like that. So that's the biggest aspect of it that they gravitate to.
So would there be like a group construction? Like, if you can gather 10 friends who also want to get married, then you can be on the group ticket?
Right. Well, we split the weddings up between, you know, there's an hour in between each wedding,
Uh-huh.
but throughout the day, the same, you know, decor is set up for all of them. So yeah, it could be a group effort where, you know, 5 friends wanted to get married and
If
we'll
they
put it
all
in.
want to have a Marvel team, for example.
There we go. Right.
Amazing. Cool. Okay, so this is kind of one of the new things that you're doing, which is exciting to hear about, for sure, for sure. What are your focus points for your clients right now?
I think our focus points has been one, to allow them to have faith in events again, because, you know, since this pandemic, a lot of people have just lost their trust in doing events or even planning. We've seen that a lot of people don't even want to plan into 2021. So decreasing the fear of events is one thing. The other thing is providing the reassurance, and that is having a great plan in place to say, hey, look, this is all of the risks that we've identified, and these are the steps that we're going to take to reduce those risks to protect you. I think all clients right now is wondering, how are we going to eliminate anyone from being, you know, having COVID-19 from our event or from our wedding? How are they going to be, you know, contacted by this? And just mitigating all of those unknowns
Yeah.
has been what we've really been focusing on the most. So those two things have really been at the top of our list, because those are the hard questions that all of our clients are asking. You know, if we do this and we spend our money on this, what is the likelihood that we can do it? And then what's the likelihood that no one is actually going to be infected by COVID-19, and just reducing that liability, because our clients still, you know, fear, you know, what happens if someone comes after me? What happens if someone comes after the venue and wants to sue us because they got infected through our event? So just trying to deal with those things are really at our top priority.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a difficult one for the upcoming months to reassure people that everything will be fine, because, as mentioned, we just don't know. We just don't know
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
and that's the hard thing, is just not knowing, because one, we still have so many people that have not been tested
Mhm.
for COVID-19. So how do we know if people that are coming to our events are asymptomatic, or, you know, if they actually are in the midst of, you know, the starting stages of, you know, COVID-19, and you know, all these different questions just come about. So it's just so many unknowns that really jeopardizes the success of any type of event.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's going to have a detrimental effect. I think that is visible for everyone. But I'm also very interested to hear what you expect from 2020 and beyond. So not so much these coming months, but more the years after this. When do you think the dust will settle, so to say?
I I thought about this question, and I honestly think that we probably won't see the dust really settle until 2022
Mhm.
at the earliest. I think that there's so much that we know is going to happen, but we don't know what it is. And just navigating, I think right now everyone is trying to navigate through getting back to a place where we're not stuck at home, right? A place where we're not wearing masks all the time. I think that that's really the biggest thing that we're focusing on right now, you know, in addition to treating everyone who has COVID-19. But I think after that, the next phase is honestly trying to get more tests done, trying to have a vaccine, trying to vaccinate people across the world, so that way we don't experience this again. But we're going to see the influx of people, one, who have been at home, and now that states are allowing them to go back outside and reopen, there are now going to be a lot of more cases of people being infected with COVID-19. I believe that we're going to see a lot of people who were infected be reinfected again. And so that's really going to slow down the opportunity for us to open back up the event infrastructure to say, hey, look, okay, it's safe to actually have events where people are crowded around, even if it's 50 people or 100 people. And I don't think that we're going to see that until 2022, because we have to get the vaccine out there and to really reduce the risk of people being in group settings, being in contact with COVID-19.
So, because we're using the words when the dust settles, but maybe the dust doesn't settle, as we're kind of like exploring now in this idea. How do you think it will? Do you think that the way people visit events will be fundamentally changed, or do you think at one point we will go back to what we're used to?
I think that is going to be changed. And I think, and honestly, I welcome the change because it allows us to be very different and unique. I think that we are a progressive people, that we're always trying to improve on the past. So this is a way to do that. I think that events now, we have to be more creative as far as what is engaging. What are going to be the memorable moments that we are enticing people to come to events for? And what is the dynamic that we're expecting of guests from this point on? So guest relations is really going to be a critical aspect in the planning phase, because one, the benefits of people going to these large events like South by Southwest is because they get a chance to network with people. There's a difference, in networking in person than it is online. And now trying to figure out how to do that in a face-to-face environment is really going to be something unique to overcome. So I think that, yeah, it's definitely going to be a very different way that we go about having face-to-face events, and just coming up with unique ways to do that in a safe space. Because again, sanitation and health and overcrowding is something that we have to pay close attention to once we get back to I guess the new normal that people keep saying. When the dust settles, what is that going to look like for events in a COVID-19 environment? Wow, that's yeah.
How do you think it will look like? What do you picture when you talk about the new normal?
I think I picture it being a less guest count. I don't see concerts being the same as they were. I don't see sporting events being the same as they were. I think that we are going to have to push for the virtual atmosphere, and even in that virtual atmosphere, how am I going to make it more of an experience? How am I going to really? I think about like 3D. I think about virtual reality, the true sense of virtual reality, and how we're going to make that more affordable for people to say, okay, I can purchase these goggles and I can watch a football game as if I'm a player, in a football team. So I think trying to think about those, I love how my mind races and runs with those thoughts. And so to me is yeah, it's going to be a little struggle, once we get back to it. Yeah, we may see people still in masks. Yeah, we may still see people in gloves, and we see hand sanitizing stations and unique ways of having, disinfectants at events and things like that. But I still believe that people are going to be understanding. So it may not be a jolt, in their face, like, oh my God, what is this? I think they'll understand, why we are making, such dramatic changes. But I really believe that if we're not pushing for a more virtual event atmosphere, then we're going to find ourselves that in a space where we're not really going to take advantage of people who are okay with virtual events, because I don't imagine a lot of people are still going to want to go to events until there's a proven vaccine that says, hey, it's really okay right now.
What you point out for AR and VR, for example, this is the time to shine. Now is the time to put in work, what we probably already could do, but never really looked into because it was just not needed, because the speaker would capture the attention in person. And now we can look at these opportunities. Other than that, have you identified any new opportunities through this time for event organizers?
Outside of the micro weddings that we've mentioned, we're still trying to figure out what new opportunities that we have as far as getting people to celebrate an event. Things like, what I've seen is, things like going back to, it's weird because going back to things like an old school drive-in movie,
Yeah.
and setting that up, and making that into an event. I've seen an outdoor concert where people are still in their cars,
Yeah.
and still enjoying it. You have the DJ there, and just like it's causing us to come up with these ideas and try to figure out how that's going to work and be successful. So nothing in stone just yet, but there's so many possibilities. So just trying to work out the logistics and the kinks to make sure that it's going to be successful. Because one thing I don't want to do, we talked about clauses and jeopardizing, people's health, is I don't want that to happen. I don't want us to produce an event where we are jeopardizing anyone or it's a result of someone being infected. So just really taking the time to think things through and not to rush into it is where we're at right now.
Hopefully we're going to be able to move to a next phase within this
Yes.
whole situation we're in, within the de-escalation that is happening in some places already. For the places where it's not happening just yet, in the states that are still very locked up, I honestly hope that they will be able to have a little bit more of a positive outlook. But I'm very happy to speak with you and to hear how much ideas there are, how quickly you can pivot into at least make these micro weddings. Maybe this is a complete new era for micro events as a whole, right? Because let's be honest, people just want to meet each other. One thing that becomes increasingly clear over this past month, where everybody has been zooming away and been in numerous video calls, is that people can't wait to meet each other again.
It's so true.
Yeah.
So true. It's just the connections. It's just, we're missing out on it.
Exactly. But yeah, still, we should be very happy that we're in the era that we're in and that we are able to meet through these means, and that there's so many opportunity laying in front of us. And hopefully this will all settle down soon, especially for people who have been hit hard by the disease itself, or people around them who have been hit hard by the disease themselves, because obviously for them it's a complete different situation and they won't be able to look forward like we are doing and discussing right now. I think we're both completely aware of that as well. So without diminishing them and their thoughts, I'm really happy that you have a positive outlook on this and that you were willing to share that with us, with me today especially. It was fun to hear your take on the whole thing, and also how it differs a bit from what we've been hearing mainly in Europe right now. So thank you very much for wanting to share that with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.